Hey, what's up, Mavs fans? Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host here on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks radio network. Spectacular night. Luka Doncic drops a historic 73 points in the win over the Atlanta Hawks as the Mavericks get the 148-143 win over Atlanta tonight, snapping their three-game losing streak. Appreciate you hopping in with me here on my YouTube live channel. Hopefully you can see it pretty good here on the YouTube channel. I won't be doing too much moving because you see it's doing a little bit of this thing in the background. But shout out to the Morning Woodsman. Go Mavs. Yeah, it was a spectacular night. Luka Doncic, I mean, what can you say? Dropped 73 points in the game. My man goes 25 of 33 from the field, and the Mavs win 148-143 in a game that they had to have after I mentioned they lost 3 straight games and go on the road, take out the Atlanta Hawks, and they played like the desperate team. And Luka Doncic, who, of course, was named to his 5th All-Star game, 4th time as a starter in the All-Star game, made an appearance on Inside the NBA last night on TNT in Atlanta, and he put on one hell of a show as the Mavericks snapped their 3-game losing streak and now move to 25-20 on the season. Drop in your comments, drop in your super chats, drop in anything that you want to. I want to hear from you. Let me know how you're feeling about what the Mavericks were able to do tonight as Luka Doncic becomes, just the 10th player in NBA history to score at least 70 points in the game. Obviously, the 4th player to score at least 73 points in a game. There's hardly any words that you can use to describe the superlatives for a 24-year-old who put the Mavericks on his back. And think about the week that the Mavericks have had, a tumultuous one, having blown a 16-point lead against the Phoenix Suns on Wednesday. They lose by 23 in that game. They had lost to the Boston Celtics, who had no Kristaps Porzingis in that game. And then having before that lost to the Los Angeles Lakers. So you had lost to the Lakers, you had lost to the Celtics, you had lost to the Suns. You find yourself in 8th in the Western Conference. And in a difficult 8-game stretch which they're in right now, where they start a road home back-to-back. They play the Sacramento Kings tomorrow night at the AAC. Luka Doncic delivered when they needed him most. He was one of 3 guys in double figures as you look at the box score for the Mavericks tonight. Luka Doncic, obviously, with his 73, 10, and 7. Josh Green, I'll get to him here in a little bit because he was spectacular for the Mavericks. He had 21 points in the game as well, going 8 of 12 from the field, 4 of 5 from the three-point line. His dagger 3 at the end of the game really sealed things for the Mavericks to be able to get the win. So as we break it down here, the Mavericks got a huge win, a win that they needed to get. They shot an absolutely incredible 60% from the field in the game, shooting over 54% from 3. They hit 19 3-pointers in the game. They were absolutely scorching from the field all night long. Just some other numbers to give you some perspective on how it went down. They go 51 of 85 from the field. As I mentioned, 60%. Go 19 of 35 from downtown. That's a 54% clip. And they also in this game go 27 of 32 from the free throw line, which is something that the Atlanta Hawks are known for, punishing teams at the free throw line. They did so going 26 of 30, but the Mavericks were just too much in this game, and Luka really set the tone from the outset of the game and made sure that the Mavericks were not going to lose tonight. And that's the thing that impressed me most about Luka tonight. He knew that he had to deliver a big-time performance for this team to win, and they could not walk out of Atlanta without a win, especially knowing how things have been turning out for this team over the last 3 games. And you give him credit for ensuring that they were going to get the win in tonight's game. Again, let me know your comments in the chat, as I saw the Morning Woodsman in there as well. Appreciate him becoming a gray area member. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure you download, subscribe to the podcast, the Inside the Mavericks podcast, wherever you get your podcast for free. The official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. So let's break it down on how things went. You look at the first quarter, the Hawks were able to use an 11-0 run over the final 3:31 of that first quarter to take what was a 31-27 lead at the end of one. But the Mavericks turned it up, especially in that second and third quarter, scoring 39 points in the second, 42 in the third, and Luka Doncic really took over in this game. As you look back on how things went down in that second quarter, Mavs started that second quarter 11 of 15 from the field. Luka Doncic scoring 14 of the Mavericks' first 28 points of the period, going on to score 23 points in that second quarter, going 8 of 10 from the field as the Mavericks shot 71% from the field in that second quarter to tie the game at 66. And here's the thing about what Luka Doncic had to do in the game. They needed every bit of his 73 points on this night to ensure that they got the win. And if you had told me based off of the way that the Mavericks were playing so far in this game, yeah, they needed every bit of it based off of what he did, and he gave it to them. And you look at even in the fourth quarter, defense was optional in the game between the Mavericks and the Hawks, as both teams scored over 40 points in that fourth quarter. As I mentioned, the Mavericks dropped 42 in the third quarter alone, 39 in the second. So for the Mavericks, not only was it a great shooting night for them, particularly from Luka Doncic, but they were able to also get in transition as well. They scored 23 fast break points. You saw guys like Josh Green and others. Derek Lively was good in this game as well. They did a little bit of everything to ensure that they found themselves getting a win that they needed to get. Because look, if they had lost their fourth straight game, coming back home to take on the Sacramento Kings, you and I would be having a very different conversation, obviously, about what this team is. They were already missing Kyrie Irving for a second straight game with that right thumb sprain. Derrick Jones Jr. had to leave the game after hurting his wrist, after falling on a basket attempt, falling on Clint Capella. So we'll see the status of Derrick Jones Jr. going forward. I would imagine he probably won't play tomorrow night, as he has a wrist sprain that the Mavericks diagnosed him with. He was not able to return to the game. So the injury bug continuing to take its toll on the Mavericks, despite the fact that they were able to get the 5-point win. We will see about the status of Derrick Jones Jr. moving forward here. But you've seen the returns already of Dante Exum in this game tonight. There was no Kyrie Irving. There was no Dwight Powell. No Maxi Kleber, as well as that dislocation in his small toe continues to bother him. He missed tonight's game. And despite the fact that the Mavericks were thin on the front line, you look at some of the numbers from a rebounding perspective, they actually out-rebounded the Hawks 37-36, and you give them credit for being able to clean up on the defensive glass, where they got 31 of those 37 rebounds on the defensive glass. So without being big in their front court, which they really aren't anyway, they were still able to out-rebound the Atlanta Hawks in this game. You look at a guy like Derek Lively II, he had 11 rebounds in this game, was really good for them, had 9 points, 11 rebounds. He was a plus 16. He also had 4 assists in the game as well. So you obviously got the massive night from Luka Doncic with the 73 points, but you look at the other contributors in the game. Derek Lively, a plus 16. You look at what Josh Green was able to do. He was a plus 9 with the 21 points that he had. Yeah, Emmanuel, he sure did. Lively definitely played good tonight. I was really impressed with what he was able to do, as I mentioned, on the glass with a double-digit rebounding game. 9 defensive rebounds, 2 offensive rebounds as well. Obviously, you got the 10 rebounds from Luka Doncic in the game, but those were the other guys that really contributed to help. And you looked at the first half and you were wondering who else was going to come with Luka Doncic in this game. You felt early on that he was going to have a really good night based on the aggressiveness that he played with from the outset of the game. But the question was going to be who was going to come with him and be able to provide another measure of scoring. And you give Josh Green a lot of credit. We malign Josh Green quite a bit when it comes to his inconsistent play. But when you get this kind of Josh Green on a particular night, he's really, really good, whether it be getting out in transition, finishing in transition, knocking down corner threes, which he was doing quite a bit tonight. This is the Josh Green that Mavericks fans want to see on a much more consistent basis. And if they can get that from him, that gives you a little bit more confidence about what he can be as a player moving forward for them, because they're going to need him to be a much more consistent three-point shooter, which you have seen over the last several games, the consistency at which he's knocking down the three-pointer. Chuck Cooperstein pointing that out during the broadcast as well. And you saw it again tonight, going 4 of 5 from downtown, 8 of 12 overall from the field. He brings a lot of energy. He brings a lot of presence, especially in transition. And when he's at his best, he's lighting it up from the three-point line. And that's the next level for him as he continues to grow and mature in his game. When I talked to him a couple of days ago, He talked about making sure that he's staying within himself and playing the role that the Mavericks are asking him to play night in and night out. And that is be a guy that brings high energy, knocks down open shots when they're available to him, and be able to provide another scoring presence for this team as he was able to do in the starting lineup for the Mavericks. So big shout out to Josh Green and the way that he played, the consistency at which he played tonight's game. You give him a lot of credit for the way that he played. Again, throw your comments in the chat as well as we react to Luka Doncic dropping a historic 73 points in a win as the Mavericks get a 148-143 win over the Atlanta Hawks. Some of the other guys that contributed in the effort on this night, Josh Green with the 21 points. Also, Derek Lively, the second, going 4 of 7 from the field with the big 11 rebounds that he had. Also dishing out 4 assists, was a plus 16 on the night. But obviously, this night belongs to Luka Doncic. At 24 years of age, dropping 73 points, becoming the first player in NBA history to shoot at least 70% from the field while dropping at least 70 points in a game. All the adjectives, all the superlatives that you want to lay toward Luka Doncic, you can do it on this night. And think about what we just saw 48 hours ago from him, going back and forth with reporters in a game where he and his team lost their cool against the Phoenix Suns. He goes out after being selected to his 5th All-Star game, 4th time as a starter. He goes out and puts on the best performance that we have seen in the NBA this year. And for him, a measure of validation when it comes to answering his critics, because they were awful loud going into this game against the Atlanta Hawks about what he was and what he wasn't, given the fact that the Mavericks had not been able to win a game in the last couple after losing to the Suns, the Celtics, and the Lakers. He shut everybody up and reminded everyone about why he is a top 5 talent in this league, and more importantly, why he needs to remain in the discussion for the NBA's MVP. I know what Joel Embiid is doing for the Philadelphia 76ers, obviously what Nikola Jokic is doing for the Denver Nuggets. All of the usual suspects are going to be at the top. But Luka Doncic put himself back on the category and in the map for the NBA's MVP discussion, which is funny because you look at what he did back on Christmas Day, where he dropped the 50 points, becoming just the 4th player in NBA history to drop 50 points on a Christmas Day game, then backs it up and has an even more monster performance in a game where they had to have it against the Atlanta Hawks, dropping the 73 points. And he did it with a dizzying array of shots, whether it be step back 3-pointers, hitting shots behind the backboard, the incredible passing that Luka Doncic was doing tonight. He hit Derek Lively with a whoopsie-doo, flipperoo type of pass. I know that's not going to sound really cool over the podcast, but hey, it is what it is. But it just gives you an idea of the kind of high-level passing that Luka Doncic was making in this game. And for him to put this team on his back and to be able to carry them to this win, it's just ultra impressive based on the way that he played and what they needed from him going into tonight's game. Because without Kyrie Irving, you knew tonight's game was going to be a high-scoring one. Defense was going to be fairly optional in this game as well, because of the fact that these two teams can put up a lot of points. The Atlanta Hawks are a top 10 scoring team in the NBA this year. Trae Young was back. He was supposed to be on a minutes restriction, but he wound up scoring 30 points in the game. You knew DeJounte Murray was going to do his thing as well. As you look at what they were able to do, DeJounte Murray had 22. Trae Young had 30. They combined for 52 points. They got a really nice night from Jalen Johnson, who's a really improved player in the league as well. He scored 25 points in the game. And you saw the offensive firepower that the Atlanta Hawks present, but they could not stop Luka Doncic, whether they tried to blitz him, whether they tried to do anything that they could. Luka was able to diagnose and be able to make plays for himself and for his teammates. And that is the mismatch that Luka Doncic is. He is the game plan. Jason Kidd saying it after the game, where people like to call him the game plan, because that's exactly what he is. There's no game plan to really stop him, because once he figures you out, he's able to diagnose and continue to beat you in several ways. And he was able to do that in a lot of different ways against the Atlanta Hawks. So again, they got a monster performance from Luka with the 73 points. Historic night, obviously, for what he was able to bring from a scoring standpoint, from a leadership standpoint. And one thing that we have to note in this game as well, setting the tone, diving on the floor for loose balls. And I talked about it in the pregame show in going into the game tonight against the Hawks, the Mavericks had to play with a sense of desperation to ensure that they would be the ones coming out with the win. Atlanta was on a 3-game slide. Mavericks were on a 3-game slide. Both teams needed this win. And after all the things that the Mavericks have been through this week, they played like the team that was more desperate. And it was spearheaded by arguably the best player in the league in Luka Doncic and what he set the tone in doing. And that's what you need. We've talked about what the Mavericks need from a leadership standpoint, who was going to step up and be that leader for the Mavericks. And for Luka Doncic, at least on this night, he set the example on both ends of the floor to ensure that his team followed his lead throughout the course of the night. And when you see your superstar doing all the little things, whether it be diving on the floor for loose balls, being able to set his team up for, really nice open looks, being able to get to the basket, drawing and ones, getting to the free throw line. Luka Doncic got to the line 16 times, made 15 of 16 free throws. And again, when I've talked about Luka Doncic in the context of what will take for him from going from a top 5 player to being the best player in the league, he was already a 3-level scorer. He could get to the rim, could play in the mid-range. He's hitting threes at a 37% clip this year, which is a career high for him. But if he got himself to where he was a consistent 80 to 82% free throw shooter, there was nothing that the league could do with him. And you saw tonight how he was able to punish the Atlanta Hawks for making him go to the free throw line, going 15 of 16 from the charity stripe. So all the things that you've seen from Luka Doncic, whether it be from a passing standpoint, a scoring standpoint, a leadership standpoint, at least on this night, he was able to put it all together for the Mavericks to get the win that they did. And again, they needed it badly. You look at some of the other things from the box score based on what happened tonight. Look, both teams shot incredibly well. Mavericks shot 60%. Hawks shot 53% from the field. Hawks shot 44% from 3. Mavericks shot 54% from 3. Defense wasn't there tonight for either team. But when we talk about how to win a game each night, sometimes you got to find a way to win a ball game in different ways. Sometimes it's going to be a defensive effort. Sometimes you're going to have to outscore teams. And the Mavericks on this night, led by Luka Doncic, were going to be determined. And look, we're just going to have to outscore you tonight. Defense, teams are knocking down shots at a high rate. What's the moniker in the NBA? It's a make or miss league. Cats was making shots on Friday night between the Mavericks and the Hawks. So who was going to be the team that, number one, made the shots down the stretch when they needed it most? Who was going to come up in the clutch late? And who was going to be able to be the most composed team when things got tough down the stretch? And the Mavericks on this night were the more composed team. That is something that I talked about coming out of the game on Wednesday, coming into the game on Friday. Could the Mavericks find the way to be much more composed, to put themselves in position when it came down to high-pressure situations, that they would be the team to respond with maturity and to be able to overcome adversity when things got tight? The Mavericks were that team on Friday, displaying a level of maturity, a display of calm, and that was led by Luka Doncic, who made sure that no matter how tight the situation got, I mean, the Hawks were able to close it within 6 as we got late into the fourth quarter, but they were able, the Mavericks were, to continue to put the pressure on Atlanta, and they were able to get, as I mentioned, a dagger 3 from Josh Green. Luka Doncic played well down the stretch, obviously taking over late in the fourth quarter to ensure that the Hawks would not find themselves being able to win this game. And those are the kinds of things that you need going forward for the rest of the season, responding with maturity, with calmness and presence in the face of adversity. And when things get into high leverage situations, who's going to be the team that does it? Mavericks did that on Friday night against Atlanta, and they were able to really get a nice win, a win that they absolutely had to have. So as they get ready to take on the Sacramento Kings on Saturday, how do they continue to move this forward? You look at some of the minutes for these guys tonight. Luka Doncic playing over 44 minutes in this game based on their rotation. You look at the guys that they played, they only played 9 guys just because of the fact that they were so shorthanded. Even Rashawn Holmes in this game had to play nearly 14 minutes because of how shorthanded the Mavericks were. Tim Hardaway Jr. played 32 minutes. Josh Green played over 35 minutes as well. So a lot of guys logged a lot of heavy minutes in this particular game based off of what was needed, and Luka being able to do that. That's right, Christian Warrior. Luka, That's all that you need to say and all that you need to be when it comes to Luka Doncic on this night. Yeah, Luka was on fire. So look, now that the Mavericks find themselves in this position, they are now 25-20 on the year. They move to 12-9 on the road to get that important road win as well. So again, I want to hear from you. I want to know how you felt about this game as well, as we're live here on Kevin Gray Sports. Again, if you're listening to the podcast as well, you're listening to it on Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast. I'm 97.1 The Freak. Again, my name is Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre and post game host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks radio network. Mavericks used a 42-point third quarter to be able to really help them as well in this game. Let's say from Barry B here. Also, Luka did this on the day that Kobe yeah, on the anniversary of the unfortunate passing of Kobe Bryant. Yeah, Luka Doncic put together one of the most historic performances in NBA history. And of course, we remember Kobe for the 81-point game that he had in his career as well. So we've seen some monster performances in the league over the last several days. I mean, Joel Embiid had his 70 points. Karl Anthony Towns had 62. Even Devin Booker, I know, he had 62, albeit in a loss to the Indiana Pacers. We've seen some monster games so far this year, and just over the last week, we have seen some incredible performances. But yeah, for Luka Doncic to score that 73 points on the anniversary of Kobe Bryant's unfortunate and untimely passing just adds just another layer to what was an absolutely historic night as far as Luka Doncic is concerned. I want to put some numbers to this because I want to have you understand the kind of perspective here on what Luka Doncic did based off of what he was able to do. So Doncic becomes the fourth player in NBA history to score at least 73 plus points and the first ever to score 70 plus on 75% or higher from the field. What can you say? You saw it. Look, you saw it. As far as the dizzying array of shots that he was able to hit, again, whether it be step back 3-pointers, everything that he put up, it felt like was going in. And again, when the Mavericks find themselves playing advantage basketball, being able to knock down shots, because the key for this team is when threes are going in, this team is devastatingly good. And you saw that on Friday night against the Hawks, going, 19 of 35 from downtown. When the Mavericks are making threes, they are tough to beat when it comes to looking at them night in and night out. From Grady, could have been 80 if Hardaway would have quit jacking up shots. Look, Tim Hardaway Jr. was one of 3 players to go into double figures. I mean, you look at the numbers on the night. I mean, he had 13 points. He hit 3 3-pointers. Josh Green had the 21, and Luka had the 73. That was it for guys in double figures on this night. So while I feel you, Grady, the same time, Tim Hardaway, he hit some big shots for this team as well when they needed it to. But I get what you're saying. But again, that was the question that I had as I was watching the game. And obviously, doing it for the broadcast is who else was going to come with Luka Doncic to be able to help him be able to get this win. And Hardaway hit some timely shots in this game. Obviously, Josh Green doing the same. So Tim Hardaway, look, I don't have a bad thing to say about Tim Hardaway Jr. so far this year. My man's a leading 6th man of the year candidate. He's a top 10 3-point shooter in the league this year. He's knocking down threes at a high rate and playing at a high level. Tim Hardaway Jr., for the most part, has been really good for this Mavericks team this year. So while Grady, I got you. Look, man, Tim Hardaway Jr., for the most part this season, has been everything that the Mavericks needed him to be, especially as a guy that's knocking down 3-pointers. So with the Mavericks getting this win, we spin it forward towards Saturday as they get ready to welcome in the Sacramento Kings, De'Aaron Fox, and that high-powered offense as well. That is a team that loves to get up and down the floor in transition. It'll be interesting to see what kind of legs the Mavericks have. They'll have a little bit later of a start time. It'll be at 8 o'clock at the AAC as they get back to Dallas after their win tonight in Atlanta. How much more will they have as they have that road home back-to-back? And again, you look at the schedule and the way things have played out for the Mavericks from a schedule standpoint, schedule's been rather unkind to them throughout the course of the year, playing these road home back-to-backs, and they have to be able to get themselves ready for a game the next day. It's been really hard for them at times in terms of the schedule. Shout out to Eric Lewis. Yeah, it's simple. Luka, Luka, again with the 73 points on this night. So look, I'm glad that the Mavericks were able to find a way to get a win, because if they didn't, that would have put them on a 4-game slide with a difficult opponent coming in on Saturday night. This does a lot for the confidence and the psyche of this team, and for Luka to respond to all the criticism and the negativity that in some ways, honestly, he kind of heaped on himself based on the way that he responded, dealt with the fan of the Phoenix Suns on Wednesday in the AAC, and how that went down post game with the reporters as well. Luka had earned some of that criticism based on the way that he had responded. But when you let your game do the talking, and you saw him talking to the Hawks fans, he was, making his presence felt and known about what he was doing to the Hawks on Friday night. You could tell he wanted this game real bad. So, and Grady, yeah, you're right. He just wasn't on the night. 3 of 9 from 3. Like I said, could have had a little bit better of a shooting night, but made some timely shots when he needed to. And that was the theme on this night. Luka Doncic setting the pace, guys hitting timely shots, being able to help support Luka Doncic when they needed to. And Josh Green, who was the unsung hero tonight, I'll sing his praises because I thought he played his best game of the season. And I want more of Josh Green. I want more of that from him based on what he was able to do in supporting Doncic. Because if that is a guy that can turn the corner and find a measure of consistency, when Dante Exum is able to fully be healthy and continue to be the contributor that he was, you saw the night that he had based off of some of the numbers that he had. He was 3 of 6 from the field, 2 of 2, from the 3-point line, had 9 points as well. All of these things, because here's what I want. I want for the Mavericks to finally get themselves fully healthy so we can see what this lineup looks like fully formed. We still haven't seen that yet. They've had more starting lineups in the NBA than any team so far this year, and yet and still they find themselves 5 games above 500, still trying to get themselves to the top 6 of the West. The confidence that you should have and what you should be feeling good about is once they get themselves fully formed and healthy, then they can start to develop the kind of continuity that we haven't necessarily seen throughout the course of the year. And sometimes they'll need monster games for Luka Doncic, maybe not necessarily 73, but you get my drift. They'll need monster performances from Luka Doncic to help them steady things until they're able to get themselves fully formed and healthy. And once Kyrie Irving gets back from that thumb sprain, who knows how long that's going to be, hopefully not nearly as long, as he's already missed a couple of games with that injury. Once they get healthy, then you and I can start to really feel a little bit different about what this team looks like on a night-to-night basis. But I still haven't had to be able to form a fully formed opinion yet on this team, because I don't know what they look like healthy. I don't know what they look like fully formed yet. And that's been the struggle that I've had with this team is, what will they finally look like when they have a chance to have all their guys to be able to start putting themselves in position to develop some continuity and chemistry to be able to move forward and be able to make a little bit of a run at this thing, instead of having the fluctuations night in and night out at what the starting lineup looks like versus what it doesn't look like when we look at them from game to game. From Barry B, Kyrie has always had an injury history. This is what we have to expect from him in and out of the lineup. And I get that. And that's been a part of Kyrie Irving's story throughout the course of his now 13 seasons in the league. But at the same time, this is who you got. And if you could find a way to allow him to be in the lineup, healthy night in and night out, now we can get a better idea of what this team is, because that's all I want now moving forward as they go through this difficult stretch where their opponent win percentage over these 8-9 games, their collective opponent winning percentage is 605. They have a very, very difficult schedule based on the teams that they are playing. It doesn't get any easier. They played Atlanta tonight, who gave them everything that they could handle. They take on Sacramento on Saturday. They play the Orlando Magic. When you look at the schedule that they have based on what they still have to go as far as the pre-All-Star break schedule is concerned, it's not easy at all. Look, they beat Atlanta. They take on Sacramento. They play Orlando on Monday. Then they got to go on the road on the 31st to play the Timberwolves. Then they come back home to play Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks on February 3rd. Then they begin an East Coast road trip, and includes the Sixers, the Brooklyn Nets, and the New York Knicks before they come back home on February 10th to take on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder. They've got to find a way to steal a couple of these wins, and they got the win that they needed to get most on Friday night, given the fact of what you just heard from the schedule there, how difficult things are going to be over the next several games before they get to the All-Star break. So again, massive win for the Mavericks, 148-143 over the Atlanta Hawks. Luka Doncic is the story on this night. He goes for 73 points in the win, going 25 of 33 from the field, 8 of 13 from downtown, 15 of 16 from the free throw line. Stop me if the superlatives are too much. 10 rebounds, 7 assists in the game as well. Was a plus 13, and my man did absolutely everything and more to put this entire franchise, as he's done ever since he stepped foot into this league, on his back to ensure that the Mavericks were not going to leave Atlanta without a win. And that's exactly what happened in Atlanta on Friday night. So look, give Luka Doncic all his flowers, and he deserves every bit of it based on the way that he played, and the Mavericks needed it, and they got it. Big shout out to Josh Green. Season high 21 points for him, as he was able to go 4 or 5 from downtown, hit some big shots, especially the big one at the end, to put the dagger in the Atlanta Hawks to be able to seal the 5-point win. Mavericks get back on the floor on Saturday night when they take on the Sacramento Kings before they welcome in the Orlando Magic on Monday to continue their difficult stretch here as they continue to move forward in the Western Conference. Again, make sure you download the Inside the Mavs podcast wherever you get podcasts for free. You can also subscribe to my channel here on Kevin Gray Sports on YouTube. Make sure you like and comment on this as well. Please like the video as well, trying to hit that algorithm thing. And make sure you submit a comment as well based on what happened in this game. You can also listen to this on Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak as well. Big win for the Mavericks, 148-143. They answer a lot of critics. Jason Kidd had his critics coming loud, including myself, coming after him after the way this team had looked over the past 3 games. But his team responded, and it was spearheaded by Luka Doncic's historic 73-point performance in Atlanta for the win. Again, thank you for joining me here on my YouTube live here for Inside the Mavs. Again, one more time, download the Inside the Mavericks podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating, write a review for it while you're there, and also like and comment on this video as well, and subscribe to my channel here at Kevin Gray Sports. I'll have the pregame show on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network on Saturday beginning at 7:30 with tip-off at 8 o'clock at the American Airlines Center, as the Mavericks look to make it 2 in a row when they welcome in De'Aaron Fox and the Sacramento Kings at the AAC. Should be a lot of fun in Dallas with 2 high-powered offensive teams. Defense will probably be optional in that particular game. Again, thank you for joining me here on Inside the Mavs here on Kevin Gray Sports on YouTube, and I'll talk to you on Saturday for the Mavericks pregame show beginning at 7:30. Y'all have a good night. We'll talk to you later. Peace.